Hey, we're live.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and welcome to this special meeting of the Mahone Bay Town Council. We've gathered today here in the Town Hall Council Chamber. A full council is here, and we also have citizens and friends at home who are watching us on YouTube. There will be the agenda has 2 items for discussion. Council will then go in camera, and there are 2 items for discussion under the MGA section 22(2)E, contract negotiations, and 22(2)A, the acquisition, sale, lease, and security of municipal property. We'll begin by acknowledging that we are gathered today in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral, present, and future home of the Mi'kmaq people. Today, we gather with the intent followed by the Living Peace and Friendship Treaties, and we do so with respect, cooperation, and coexistence. Welcome, Council. You have an agenda that was emailed to you. What is your wish?
Mayor, I move that we approve the agenda as submitted.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Now. You've heard the motion moved and seconded. On the question, all in favor? The motion is carried. The agenda is approved. We'll go right to the first item, the staff reports. Section 2.1, the staff report on the Edgewater Street Living Shoreline Project, Phase 2. CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate everybody gathering today to consider this opportunity. It is, as often, funding opportunities, a time-sensitive opportunity. We have alluded to this fund being announced a couple of weeks ago, and Coastal Action has been working to develop an application. I think at this point, we've kind of ironed out most of the criteria of the program. There was another call last evening, and another call last evening with the officials of the NIF program. So the recommendation here is for the town to partner with Coastal Action on what essentially amounts to a additional phase of the Living Shoreline project. When council approached this back in 2016, it was understood to be one project. As it's turned out, we broke off the first 60-meter section, and that has been completed. This fund affords an opportunity for another 100-meter section, which would take us around to the end of the parking areas past the 3 churches. Ultimately, it will be just like what's done there now, except it will wrap around. And unlike the demonstration section, would actually afford a material benefit to storm protection. Unfortunately, the section that's been done is so easily lapped by any stormwater that it doesn't really provide a measurable benefit. Going around as far as the end of the parking lots would be able to provide a distinct benefit to the churches, will not protect the unarmored section of Edgewater Street. That will remain a future phase. But when you look at the 80% funding supplied by NIF and the intention for Coastal Action to bring some, donation contribution to the field as well, I think we're looking at a formula for support on this very similar to what council envisioned, which is that the town's contribution would represent no more than 10% of the total project cost. So with that in mind, the recommendation is included in the report, which would be a recommendation that the town provide a letter indicating our support for the Coastal Action led application. It can be led by the town, can be led by Coastal Action. The criteria are pretty much the same. To apply for natural infrastructure funding, funding for the next phase of the shoreline project. Proposing a contribution of $100,000 in line with the total project budget of what council has budgeted in this year's budget. There is a note there, but in-kind support. It has actually been clarified that although Coastal Action were hoping they could count that towards the contribution, it will not be eligible. So that does not need to be included in the motion if we pass the motion today. So all that being said, happy to take any questions.
Councillor Carter.
Thank you. Is the September 27th deadline a hard deadline, or will there be follow-up openings?
There hasn't been an indication yet about a second opportunity for funding under NIF, but there probably will be at some point.
But related to that question is the question of and you've alluded to this issue actually in your preamble, is the question of monitoring the current project to see how effective it is to ensure that our next project is a suitable and reasonable follow-up.
Yeah, I think if you're actually looking to see, I mean, you can look at the current project and see if the vegetation is retained and that type of thing. So there are some certainly demonstration value to the current project, but in terms of will it mitigate storm impacts, the proof on that would require doing the next section. And I think what we'd say in that respect is, once this part is complete, there can be and will be a necessary pause before Edgewater Street, before the unarmored section gets funded. We don't know quite yet how. And so any, information gathered from the efficacy of this first section would then apply to the design of that section, which also is probably a little bit more up in the air because there is no armoring there now. So they're not working from the existing armoring where they were.
Just a technical question, I guess. In the original design way back when, the idea was to, in the process of building this shoreline, was to raise the walkway by, as I remember, 18 inches from what was there before. And I'm quite sure that hasn't been done yet. So is there a plan to do that, or because that was kind of part and parcel of the whole sea level rise subset, what do you call that? Nova Scotia sinking.
Yeah.
Subsidence.
So this section would be required in order to do that, because obviously you couldn't raise just the section that's there now. It's more of a tripping hazard than it would be as a protection. So I don't know from CBCL's estimate, and I'll have to look into, is that actually included in the cost here? But this would be necessary in order to do that. We've applied now twice to other external funding sources for just the trail. And so it may be necessary to find an additional block of funding for the trail part. And we're still pending. We haven't actually heard back from either of the funding sources we've applied to. But yeah, I would suggest that might be an additional, just because there's a cap of $1 million under this program in the first place.
Dylan, I think you rightly pointed out the ratio is kind of consistent with our kind of long-term 90-10 split. The only difference is that now I think we're at a point where we would think we would almost entirely fund our $100,000 contribution through debt, which obviously has a higher carrying cost than it did, say, 3 years ago. But such is life. Really, I think the only thing outstanding in my mind is the opportunity cost. Like if we do this investment under this program, does that, I know we also talked about some of the water course work up through the property on the back of the soccer field and rerouting continuing on the water work that was happening from Fairmont Street all the way down through the woods. And I thought that was a similar program that we were availing ourselves of to try to get access to funds to try to reroute that water down to the Ernst Brook and all of those things. If we do this, does that preclude us from moving forward with that initiative?
It's a good question. When we budgeted with that one, we didn't actually budget on external funding. I had been hoping to look at the flood risk infrastructure improvement program for the province, but it was clarified that would not be an eligible cost, because I still can't figure out what is an eligible cost for the flood risk infrastructure improvement program. I really am stumped by trying to make something fit into that. So it could possibly have been made to fit the NIF guidelines, that suggestion project. Obviously, it's a lot smaller. It's only about $100,000 project. So the best use of the funding is probably to go with the bigger project. But also, having spoken with the program officials, our application has been described as a very strong one and has a lot going for it. And that other project, I think, would have a bit of a steeper hill to climb. For example, we don't have St. Mary's University vouching for it as a valuable demonstration of a concept, which we do have thanks to Coastal Action's work on the waterfront.
Councillor Carver?
I have a procedural question, which is, it sounds as if staff is asking for a motion today, and I guess it's because of the tight time frame. Yet we only received this information yesterday. And in the context of the council policy which says that we can expect to receive information X number of days before a meeting. I'm just wondering how.
So procedurally, the policy actually exempts special meetings from that requirement. So information to be submitted when it is available, and that's because it only became available. We got the documentation from CBCL in the middle of this week, so it would have been too late. Yeah, so it's more down to council's comfort level with being able to make a decision on that basis.
Deputy Mayor,
I'm ready to move.
Excellent.
same thing, Councillor Wilson? Any other questions? Okay,
I'd like to move the council approve the signing of a letter indicating the town's support for the coastal action-led application to the Federal Natural Infrastructure Fund for the next phase of the shoreline improvement project on Edgewater Street, and indicating the town's commitment to contribute 100,000 should the project receive NIF funding approval.
okay. You seconded, Councillor Wilson? You've heard the motion? On the question? All in favor? Motion's carried.
Well, thank you, everyone. I'll get that letter off to Coastal Action, and we'll look forward to meeting that deadline.
Okay, item number 2 on our agenda is the Regional South Shore Sustainability Summit.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So much like the last one, I think we're trying to be opportunistic about opportunities to implement council's strategic plan when those opportunities come along. And in this case, there's a proposal that's basically circulating around simultaneously to all of the municipal units in the county, although I will say that Casey DeLong at MODL has been a particular champion of this particular initiative. And the proposal is for an FCM regional climate program. So it's sort of like you can implement this anywhere in the country following the FCM's guidelines, but there needs to be an anchor entity. And so the Atlantic Infrastructure Management Network has served as that anchor entity for these type of programs quite often in the past. Clean Nova Scotia is another organization that often serves as an anchor for maritime implementation of FCM programs. This is the way the FCM does these things. So essentially the proposal is that the municipalities in the county get together and leverage their contributions with FCM money to hold a regional climate program, which is essentially a series of intermunicipal workshops around climate policy as it relates to asset management in particular, because that's Ian's background. But ultimately is about building sort of common understanding about all of our approaches to climate, and it would culminate in the idea of organizing the regional climate summit. And that summit would be intended to be, certainly bringing in municipal participation, but the notion of the summit as opposed to the program is that the summit would also be an event that would be open to other organizations. We'd have to determine that through the program, what that would look like, and involve civil society and the general public, and help to educate people about some of the municipalities' shared ambitions as far as climate goes. So the actual proposal here, again, a letter. There's a draft of the letter in the package. It's a standard letter. We've signed it before when it came to the AIM cohort participation that we've done twice in the past, but it just looks slightly different in this case. And recommended that we would sign that. And then also we do need, it doesn't necessarily have to be at this time, it wouldn't hurt to select people who would kind of play the lead role from council and staff in terms of participating in the program, if council is inclined to do so. Any questions? Oh, and we have a budget. I should have mentioned that we have a budget for climate energy initiatives. We've used it thus far for prizes for the survey that was being done this summer with our summer students and other small items like that. But it is sufficient to accommodate the $1,900 request.
Councillor Feeney,
Mayor, I'd move the council approve the signing of a letter of commitment with the AIM network for participation in the proposed FCM Regional Climate Program and organization of the South Shore Sustainability Summit in 2023.
thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor now, Councillor. Okay, I was looking that way. Okay, on the question, Councillor Carver.
Yes, I would just like clarification from the CAO about the request to assign a member of our council member to the to participate in the program? And did you say that that's not required or it's not required right now?
Well, the letter leaves room for it. My understanding is that the key thing they want is the letter making the financial commitment. But in the past, what we did was, the two council members who were on the asset management committee were the members who went to the asset management cohort. So I was suggesting in this case, we have a climate environment committee. Possibly those members, possibly the asset management committee members might have an interest in helping with this, participating in this program. So ideally, we would say of those four, we could name, 2 to 4 of them now, but I think it'd be fine if we went back later. I'll put myself and David on, I guess, by default, because that's what I would usually
Two
do.
from each of those committees, from the Environment Committee and the Asset Management Committee.
Well, it's supposed to be a total, I think, of 4 or 5 participants, but we can,
But we can't
could just
count
let them
any
know
of
how many we've got.
And would those be the municipal, the council members of the committees or citizen members of the
So
committee?
this list is just for the council and staff, but then there will be a role for citizen members with the summit.
Oh, okay, thank you.
To be determined, but that's, we talked about the fact that we have some citizen members and so do some of the other committees.
Okay, any other questions? On the motion, all in favor? Motion is carried.
That took much less than an hour.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, if anybody wants to volunteer that they have time and interest now, it wouldn't hurt, but I don't know how council wants to handle that. I don't know if you need a motion to appoint the people who will participate in this program, and if so, if you want to think about that till a future meeting, or if there's.
Maybe at the next council meeting, we can
Then on to the next council.
consider that.
Yeah, I'm sure that. would-
Give people around the table a chance to think about it. Check their calendars.
How much, what it involves actually.
I think there's a day in December, the 25th, that we've got nothing scheduled, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, and at your next meeting, you've also got to pick people to serve on the logo steering team, so, probably not all the same people, you can spread it around.
Share the wealth. Oh, okay. So that concludes the regular agenda items, those 2 staff reports. So I would entertain a motion to go in camera. Councillor Feeney?
Any questions from the
Gallery?
YouTube public?
Oh, are we going to do those? Okay, let's do that. No, you're right. We always do that at our regular meetings. So we'll ask the people at home who may have joined us on YouTube, if you have any questions, to type those questions in. And we'll give a couple of minutes for that to happen.
Do we need to get Kelly to help?
Oh,
with
I
that?
think.
I can do it, I just didn't, I'll just do 1 second here. What David said is great, they'll type them in, I'm just gonna go confirm that they have. And we'll give a couple of minutes for that. All the way, a little unnerving.
Yeah. Then it all blew
Actually,
away.
the truck, I just saw it go by.
Looks good.
The
Yeah.
new truck?
So I keep.
Put it in service as of last night.
Okay, we don't have any,
Well, let's, maybe we'll just wait for a minute to,
move over to that station so I can.
somebody scrambling at home to get their question typed in.
We only had 2 viewers this
I was
time.
gonna say, we
I
would,
hear a number, I move that we move into closed session.
you'd move that, would you? Do we have a seconder? Deputy Mayor, on the question, all in favor, motion's carried. Thank you for the people at home that chose to join us this afternoon. Stay safe tonight. And we'll now cut off the feed to the YouTube.